I'm so happy to meet you.
You have such pretty hair.
Thank you.
You should have it styled.
Oh, I'm sure you're right. Would you like a tour of the house?
What did she say? She wants to show us around her farmhouse. She's proud of it, I think. Do they keep animals inside?
From Cinderella and her wicked evil stepsisters to the March sisters in Little Women, the relationship between female siblings is a favorite in works of fiction. One of the latest to enter that realm, Amy and Ollie Shred in Betsy Lerner's debut novel, Shred Sisters. Lerner has written about depression, compulsive eating, and mother-daughter bonds in earlier works of nonfiction. And while the format has changed in her newest work, the emotional journey she takes readers on remains.
So these are the journals.
These are mostly from my 20s.
Okay.
And I wrote almost every day, mostly about how unhappy I was, how lonely, miserable, no boyfriend, etc. Communed with my soul.
From diaries more than 4 decades old,
I saved every letter I've ever received.
agent, editor, and writer Betsy Lerner has found a connection.
I'm tired of trying to just deal with myself. I feel like hibernating forever tonight amidst cold, empty walls. I am breaking into a million pieces fast. So yeah, it's so sad.
But also relatable.
This is for anyone who keeps a diary.
So much so, she went viral with a diary post on TikTok a year ago.
Mostly a chronicle of disappointment, heartbreak, depression, and loneliness.
Young people were writing to me how much they related to the pain that I was in my early 20s from the diaries. And I felt this very deep connection, both to my young self and to these kids.
I may hate myself from time to time, but I do love life.
Lerner's look back also served as inspiration for Shred Sisters, her first work of fiction written at age 64.
I say to people it took 7 months and 40 years to write this book. All of my experience, all of my perspective, all of my young pain, it all manifested in the book.
A book Lerner wasn't planning to write until one day during COVID, she opened her laptop and started to type.
And I wrote the first lines of the book. And then it just poured out of me.
The first lines as we read them.
Yes, which I also thought were placeholder. You know, the first line is, here are the ways I could start this story. I was just thinking out loud. I never thought it would end up in the book.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a crazy ride.
Not so crazy, Lerner's lifelong appreciation of the written word.
As I'm looking at the books that we're surrounded by, what is it that you love about books?
I think from a very young age, I found it was the first place where I ever felt really understood. And then also, my mother always dreamed of being a writer, and she taught me what a simile was when I was 8 years old, and I thought,
wow.
I kept trying to make them. I mean, I loved language.
A movie lover as well, Lerner enrolled at NYU with dreams of becoming a screenwriter.
I was 19 years old.
She'd get kicked out of film school, but graduated with a degree in English, pursued a master's in poetry, then found a job in publishing.
I found that all the skills I had learned in my MFA program and about language, I could apply what I knew about a poem to a book. Structure, language. If you think about a line break in a poem, that's the drama. And in a book, it's the chapter end or the space break. And I was just obsessed with all of that. I loved writers. I was fascinated by how their minds worked.
She'd go on to climb the publishing ladder, working as an editor, nonfiction writer, and agent. One of her more rewarding projects, Just Kids, in 2010, with acclaimed singer and songwriter Patti Smith. The National Book Award-winning memoir about Smith's relationship with photographer Robert Mapplethorpe, the result of an unsolicited reach-out by Lerner.
Well, first thing she said is, I'm not writing my autobiography, not writing that. She said, but you know, I made a vow to Robert Mapplethorpe when he died that I would write our story of our young life in New York. And I said, that's the most beautiful idea I've ever heard. And 10 years later, Just Kids.
That decade of work gave birth to a friendship that's lasted beyond 2.
We're besties.
You didn't see that coming when you sent that letter.
No, in fact, I think it took me about 4 years before I even said anything personal about myself to her. I was so, I don't want to say intimidated, but I was in awe, and my job was to help her with her writing.
Yeah.
And then we got very close. You know, it's a very intimate relationship, editing. you're touching somebody's most precious thing.
Which made Smith the perfect onstage partner for Lerner's Shred Sisters launch party.
She seems like she's very nice and modest, but she's actually really funny, and she can be even evil, you know.
It was a beautiful night.
Yeah.
Now we've done 4 books together. We have a vocabulary. We can finish each other's sentences. You know, she knows exactly what word I'm going to take out. It's quite symbiotic.
Lerner's voice is loud and clear in Shred Sisters.
It was just it is informed by my whole life.
The story is told by book editor Amy, the younger intellectual Shred, often overshadowed by her prettier, exuberant older sister Ollie, who's living with mental illness.
You are bipolar. Mm-hmm. How has that impacted what you do and who you are now?
I was diagnosed when I was 15, and I refused to stay on medication for 15 years, mostly because I didn't like how it made me feel.
That sounds like Ollie.
Yes. And I think a lot of people are, you know, not medicated
Right.
properly. So I found a genius psychopharmacologist eventually when I was 30, and when I had my daughter. He finally got me on the right medication and the right dose, which is also critical. And I've been stable for 35 years. I've never had another episode of depression or mania.
Do you think you would have written Ollie the way you did if you hadn't had those personal experiences versus hearing it from somebody else?
Oh no, the bipolar experience in my character is written from the inside out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what about Amy?
I'm very dutiful. I'm very disciplined. When I go to a party, I don't light up the room. I stand against the wall and watch everybody. You know, that's Amy. She watches everybody. And I think the writer in me was always the observer.
The same observer who sees the power of honest expression, no matter the format it's shared in.
What is it like to see bits of yourself on the page, but also in a work for the first time of fiction for you?
So exciting and so much fun, honestly. I don't know if this is true for other writers, but once it's in a book, it's not really yours anymore.
I almost cried.
You've written it for people, and have at it, you know. I want to share the deepest, most costly things. That's what interests me as a reader and as a person.
And that's what grabs you in this book. It's so funny. We talked about her love of screenwriting early on. That's what she went to film school for. She's never let go of that and continues to try to do some screenplays. I looked at her and I was like, this book. I can see this book on the screen, be it big or small. So
yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, she's incredible, so multifaceted in all of her talents. I mean,
accomplished and then adding to it. Yeah.
Love it.